Welcome back to our monthly webinar. In our latest series of webinars, we've been looking at more at the wonderful world of sales. This week's webinar is along a similar line. It's incorporating DISC knowledge and hopefully enhancing the sales process with it. In fact, it's more around looking at getting better and smoother with the whole sales close by focusing on buying decisions. We realise how critical it is to understand how motivators also influence these buying decisions. Many salespeople that I find anyway tend to focus on selling the information about their product or service to potential new customers. Some top salespeople might take it further and identify the best way to communicate, identify things like the pain points or the needs for using their particular product or service. I've seen some sell brilliantly by turning all this information around and selling back the benefits to the potential customer. Yes, all of these techniques are important as part of sales training and sales knowledge. However, there is one particular area that is often overlooked and not brought into the conscious mind of the salesperson enough, and that is understanding the way the potential customer makes their buying decision, or even more to the point, what motivates them to make their buying decision. Granted, this is not your everyday knowledge. It's really getting through to the psychology of sales and the consumer. But if you want to take your sales to another level, you do need to consider this and get familiar with the why and the how of it all. Like anything, selling is a skill that improves with practice. It's like learning a new language, really. When I lived in Holland, I picked up a few words and had started to string them together to make a very short, and many would say weird, sentence. Nevertheless, the more I heard and tried to use my Dutch, the better I got. When I came back to New Zealand and no one was around me speaking it, everything I learned slowly went over the next few months. I didn't practice, so practice makes permanent. Sales skills are no different. It's a conscious thought if you want to develop a new level. It's the salespeople who are continually developing their sales skills in this way that gain a competitive edge, and sometimes this means trying things out of the comfort zones or becoming conscious about new aspects of your potential customer. So if you want to become conscious about something, we're going to talk about that a bit further, but when we look at implementing or learning awareness about DISC, for example, these are the 4 steps on the slides that we often implement. Firstly, we must understand the different DISC types of our prospects. What's out there, how people are different. Next, we need to know our own preferred selling type. So we need to gain awareness about ourselves and our particular style. Then we need to identify the DISC personality type of our prospect. We do this by observing them, assessing where those observations might fit, and then recognizing their style. Now that you know that, we can then adjust our selling style to be more effective for our prospect. That means adjusting and understanding what motivates them, not us. Obviously, there are a lot of different areas that we actually could focus on in using our DISC knowledge. So why are we honing in particularly on the decision-making aspect of the styles? Well, at the end of the day, when we sell, we are trying to lead the prospect to make a decision. Simple. This decision is not always about the ultimate final purchase, though. Obviously, that would be really nice if it was. But it's to get them to make a decision or a step in the right direction, basically forward progress. Nothing is worse than clients making no decision and then the salesperson is left floundering, not sure how to progress the sale, so it goes nowhere. And that is possibly because their motivators haven't been triggered. Often when this happens, it can be relatively dangerous to the outcome of the sale. Competitors can get their foot in the door, and if they do a better job of it, often seal the deal. I've often heard from companies that had pharmaceutical reps in selling the very same product under a different brand, for example, that they decided to go with one over the other because that person made the process seem easier or simpler to make their decision. It was more in line with what motivated that person to make a decision. So coming back to look at buying decisions, we do tend to assume our prospects make their buying decisions the same way that we do. That's why being aware of both your own decision-making style and your prospect's decision-making style is really important. After all, selling, as we've just worked out, is all about decision-making. So one of the most important things to keep in mind is how you can make the decision process easier for your prospect. Make it too complex and you'll hear I'll come back to you on that, or let me think about it, far too soon in the cycle, which is a bit of a clue. Make it easy for them and you'll keep them motivated to keep listening and asking questions. These are buying signals. So, for example, you yourself might need a lot of facts. You might like to know all the details about products, see manuals, instructions, and evidence of how others have used it before you buy. You might take longer to make what you perceive as the correct or right decision. Perhaps you're a C-style person, someone for whom compliance, rules, and processes is really important. But the prospect you're talking to might need only bottom line facts, short, direct bullet points of what's in it for me, the WIFM, or the bottom line benefits of how it's going to help them in particular. They might also like to be early adopters, so really they don't want to hear how others have used it successfully, and certainly really don't want to see vast amounts of instruction manuals in detail. They want to get on and make a decision, as they find forward movement very motivating. In their mind, you're waffling, and it can get them annoyed. They might feel as if they have to keep concentrating when they have already passed their point of listening without contributing or controlling what they need to hear. So this means it's out of their natural comfort zone, and it suddenly turns into the too hard to bother to listen zone. If this happens, there is a greater chance that you don't progress to sale, never alone get them to purchase. Look, I used the word motivator or motivation in the last slide. At the end of the day, it's actually this that we're trying to do successfully. We are trying to motivate and lead our prospect into being interested and engaged and being led down the sales cycle. We are trying to motivate them to make a decision in line with what they naturally feel motivated by. It might be that they feel they are missing out, or they're motivated to do something worthy for the team so they get recognition. Or maybe it's purely results driven. There's a vast list. But one thing is for sure, it really does matter how they like to be motivated to making their own buying decision. Okay, so briefly, let's look at what motivation is. Again, there are many descriptions of what it is, but in its simple form, reason or reasons one has for acting or behaving in a particular way towards a desired goal. Motivation itself, it's a funny thing, it cannot be observed. The only way we can see it is by noting the behaviours people choose to try to achieve these desired goals. It's why we behave in a certain way at work and home. It's what drives us to do things like, lose weight, go back to study, grab a glass of water, or hunt down a sale. A diagram at this point is probably the easiest way to explain behaviours and what motivates us. Keeping it nice and simple. So it's a very simplified understanding of what drives our behaviour. Once we enter a situation, we try to anticipate the outcome of what we would like from that particular situation. We then go ahead and choose the behaviour we hope that will give us the right outcome or sequence. The consequences are what we expect we will experience as a result of our chosen behaviour. As a rule, we do tend to shy away from repeating behaviours that see us receive negative consequences, like punishments. Instead, we favour positive behaviours like that will produce rewards. Sounds a bit like parenting, really. However, don't forget that what one person might see as a reward, let's say public recognition, another might see as punishment. They feel highly embarrassed being in the public limelight. Again, this depends on their disc style, so we'll look at that soon. So back to motivators. When you understand someone's behavioural style you can start to gain an understanding of things like needs and likes. Of course, when you understand a person's needs and likes, it gives you a real insight to what is their motivators, and more so, what are positive motivators for them. And we're going to be having a look at that soon. So, you know, like anything, before I start talking about motivators, I personally find it extremely important to consider the opposite, like some of the fears of the styles as well. These are opposite of what motivate them. So they naturally tend to avoid these things as they are not comfortable with them at all. The D style, let's have a quick look. The D style fears losing control or being seen as a failure. Importantly, they don't like to be taken advantage of, so they're going to have a strong personality with direct questions so they can ascertain whether they might have the upper hand. Vulnerability is not something that they like to impart with others, so a lot of asking about their feelings is not something that they really want. It's not motivating. The I style, however, fears rejection, so they'll be interested in how their decision impacts or maybe is seen by others. Conflict is usually pretty uncomfortable for them, so if you're too direct, this might seem like conflict and they'll start avoiding you. It's really interesting because, like we just said, the D style might see this directness as a strength and give you a big tick, but the I style might see it as definitely a demotivator. So another fear for the I style is becoming insignificant, and this can stretch into a variety of aspects, from not being involved in a final decision or not being recognised for something. But either way, the outcome of this is their need to be liked by others. So moving on to the S style. You know, the S style has a fear about disappointing or offending others along with things like unplanned change or instability. One that we see is a catch-22 is they like to help others, but then also too fear being used or losing face, as I've put on here on the screen. Finally, if you're talking to a C style, then understand their fear is criticism of their work, or worse, that they make mistakes. I've seen so many reps point out mistakes or point out or criticise the person's work, and it really doesn't get them off to a good start. So it's the reason why decisions or starting projects for a C style might take longer than the other styles, because they need to process it, need to make sure it's right, correct. They fear that they don't have enough information quite often to make these decisions with as well. So you'll often see them go and do more research, even though you've given them everything that you have. It's this sort of knowledge that if you are aware of, then it's the kind of thing that might set you apart from your average salesperson. It's quite important to understand what is their triggers with fears, and also to what starts to go into their unique motivators. I'm going to take you through that now, so you can always refer back to this as well. But let's have a look at some of the real buying decisions of the salespeople, real decisions of the disc types. You know, some of the factors that we'll have a look at, you'll probably already know, but it's really thinking about how you can turn this in your talk, in your sales pitch, in your talk, into reality. So let's have a look at the D style. The ability or things that help them to achieve their goals. So it helps them achieve goals. Things like easiness and quickness of the sale or service. You know, I know many times that rather than posting or sending out a D style an order form, I fill it out for them and take it and do it and get it all sorted so that it doesn't get left with them. Just little simple things like that. Things that make them a pioneer or different from the masses, so early adopters, they like to stand out. It's an image thing. Building status, you know, possibility to win, the ability to buy quickly and move on, procrastinating. So they love change, they love movement, they love forward progress. So these are going to be your fast decision makers that say, yep, let's just do that, get it under control. Can you get that tomorrow? And all of a sudden you're floundering trying to get something. So the other thing is too, things that make them look strong. They're a bit of a risk taker, so they like this. So understanding these and using them to your advantage in sales may move you a bit closer to obviously closing the deal. Let's have a look at some of the I style motivators. Again, as I styles are people and feeling oriented, a lot of their motivators are concerned with people. No surprise there. So remember, I is about influencing skills. So some of their motivators are that they need recognition and visibility from others. This is so important. Nothing like putting out an I styles flame by not giving them some recognition when they've done something well, an innovative idea, maybe a project or something like that where they need a bit of praise. They like being popular with people. You know, that's that need to be liked. They enjoy feelings and emotions. So yes, these are the type of people that you say, tell me how you feel, or tell me how you want to do this, for example. So they can talk things out. They like discussions. They enjoy a feeling of belonging. So that speaks for itself. So whether that's teams or groups or feeling a bit of a special VIP treatment from you as a rep, for example. They also respect things like testimonials and references. If other people like this, I might be missing out if I don't use it, for example. They enjoy fun activities and connections, and they love things like ability to meet new people. So again, these motivators can be the actual product or service, or even the salesperson themselves giving the ability to achieve these motivators. So you can frame up your product, what it can do, or your service for what it can do for some of these, or it can actually be the sales rep putting this into practice. So the next one we're going to look at is your S style, and we know that the S's are generally they tend to find change a little bit hard at times, and sometimes making final decisions as well. Not always. I'm not saying this is always above the board, but so their motivators tend to circle around things like security and definitely things like fairness. A major issue for them is trust, of course. It's a key motivator with the steady or the steadiness type. Do I trust you, or do I trust the product? So a good reputation can be a big advantage in this area. So their buying decisions are based on things like, as I said, security or feeling safe. How reliable are you as a salesperson or the actual product? Now this is interesting because this can even come in, reliability can set the tone if you're late, for example. So other things like proven or existing routines and systems are important for them. Fairness and justice. They're usually pretty big family-oriented people as well. And things like the removal of threats or uncertainty. So as a sales rep, if you can validate any of their objections, of course, like should be any style that you should remove that, you are able to progress them a lot quicker and a lot further. So giving them backup proof, evidence, warranties, guarantees, those kind of things that can be really good. Let's have a look at the final one, which is the C style. Motivators for the C styles are more about processes and details and the way things should be done. You know, on the slide there, you can see that it makes sense. Things like logic, and they need evidence. Well, I've seen so many, especially I style reps, not really progress their C style prospect in a logical way. They are a little unfocused. They probably go from one thing to another because that's quite fun. It's variety that the I style likes, but it's not something the C style likes when it comes to buying decisions. So logic and evidence, plenty of information to make good, well-informed decisions. Things like clear facts and details, so they can tick off questions in their mind. Again, things like factual comparisons, logic, obviously comparisons between product choices. This can be really motivating for them. Studies, test results, proof, security and safety, and things like clear instructions. If they feel that there's a risk or feel that they might not know how to implement something, that will also hold them up. So it's quite good to have a look at some of the motivation, the motivating buying decision types as well. For a while there, I even had them in my pocket, and hopefully, something you might want to do as well. But let's just have a little look at this last one here. In summary, and I'm just going to bring these up in different orders, but in summary, it tends to be main ones that the styles tend to focus on. It's a pretty critical component to know about what motivates your prospect to buy. Of course, if you haven't met them before, yes, it's learning to observe, assess, and recognise the potential main style. This takes a bit of practice. The other thing I find, just in summary, is understanding the fears of the styles, because it plays a big part in what not to do in selling to them. It keeps you on track, keeps you avoiding what they want to do. It also means that it answers, if they react in a certain way, you can assess what track you're on to see whether it actually might be one of their fears that you're entering into. As a salesperson, you need all the edge you can get in this competitive world. If you bring in things like the motivators of the styles on top of all the different wonderful techniques you have with sales, then you can bring your selling to another level. Remember, I guess the important thing is, don't assume your prospects are motivated to buy like you do. They have their own set of motivators, and it's, as I say, it's really great to tuck these up your sleeve. I know when I was selling out there, I had some in my folder that I would refresh before I went in, or even as I was going through the sales process. Sometimes I would just flick my eyes over it and just make sure, right, was I aiming towards that type of motivator? Am I on track? So maybe you can think about doing the same as well. So everyone, thanks for listening. A replay of this webinar will be up on the site in the next, say, 3 days. But look, if there's anything that you need to ask or clarify, Courtney at HR Profiling is there to take emails or phone calls for that matter. But obviously emails are pretty good for her these days. So ask questions and I'm happy to clarify or verify anything as well. So thanks for joining us again for this monthly webinar. Thanks everyone. Bye.